As the Kremlin began its war against Ukraine, it forced the closure of Russia's last independent media outlets. The aim, of course, to secure absolute control of the public narrative about the invasion and the costs of it. But did it work? And what about the people defying that control? My guest this week is Yekaterina Kotrikadze, news editor and presenter on one of the last channels to be shut down, Dozhd TV, known internationally as TV Rain. She fled Russia in the first week of March and now co-chairs a program of news and analysis on YouTube.
Это Тихон Зитко.
Это Екатерина Котрикадзе.
She joins me from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Is Russia heading back into full-scale Soviet repression? What does she feel about the international response to the war? Are Western companies wrong to pull out of Russia? Also, what do Russians know about the terrible crimes their forces are alleged to have committed? Or do most prefer to turn a blind eye?
I'm really fearing that the moment of realization, the acknowledgement will come, and it's going to be a huge problem, a huge trauma.
All that and more on Conflict Zone. Yekaterina Kotrikadze, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk first about the war, because there are one or two interesting developments that I'd like to get your thoughts on. A handful of pro-Moscow bloggers who've been towing the official line up till now seem suddenly to have found a new voice, writing openly of the stupidity of the Russian command, shortages of equipment, failure to deal with recurring problems, not idiocy, said one, but direct sabotage. How serious is that for a government that keeps telling its public that everything's going to plan?
It's a signal. You know, it's a ringing bell for Russian government because they control everything in Russia right now. They have destroyed all the independent media outlets. There is no single one independent media organization right now in Russia. So even in these circumstances, when someone criticizes the situation in Ukraine, the level of, Russian army and Russian force and so on and so forth, it means that something is really wrong there. And I really think that this is a great news because millions of Russians are watching state television propaganda, and even on the shows, on political talk shows that are actually repeating everything that Kremlin tells them to say. Even there, you can see some criticizing voices. So it's a great news for me.
Some of the observations seem pretty damning, especially on the destruction of a motorized rifle brigade that was apparently decimated as it tried to cross the Donetsk River in the eastern Luhansk region. One of the bloggers wrote, until we get the last name of the military genius who laid down a battalion group by the river, and he answers for it publicly, we won't have had any military reforms. Aren't these bloggers taking a huge risk because Moscow presumably could stamp on them anytime it feels like it?
Of course, I mean, it's all about the classic situation when you kill independent journalists, destroy independent journalists, when you destroy independent politicians, imprison them, when you detain everyone who speaks out, everyone who is liberal in Russia, then you have other people left in the country with dictatorship. And if you don't have any liberals left in the country, you will go for others. So this is something that these people, these pro-Kremlin bloggers and so-called journalists should have thought about before. They should thought about that the time for them would come as well. And it will come, of course. So I think that, of course, it doesn't mean that the propaganda will change the shift and that the propaganda will change the course. They will, of course, go on and keep on saying that Ukrainians are Nazis, that Zelensky is a fascist, that NATO is a threat to Russia, and so on.
But is the Kremlin losing control of the narrative now? Do you see this as a pattern?
I think it's too early to say so. I think that there will be a huge mobilization of soldiers in Russia. Putin is having a huge problem in Ukraine, as you can imagine and you can see. So he will need forces. He will need a quantity, bigger quantity of people, of men. So this will be the moment when a lot of millions of Russians will understand that it's not more a situation when they are sitting in front of television and criticizing Ukraine or NATO or Joseph Biden or whoever, you name it. It's going to be a time when they will, they will be forced to stand up and go to fight Ukrainians. And this will become a huge moment, a new narrative, definitely.
Bloggers are one thing, but what happens when the relatives of thousands of casualties start appearing in the streets to counter the official version of the war, asking exactly what happened to their sons or their fathers and what they've been dying for? Is that the next step?
It's not easy to forecast what's going to happen next. People in Russia, the society of Russia is depressed. It's named apathia. They are feeling kind of different feelings. First is depression. Second is fear. People are not ready so far to rally in the streets of Russian cities because they're scared of the consequences. They know that when someone goes out on the streets in Russian Federation, they are either detained or they may be followed by police officers, or police officers can come to their apartments and blackmail their relatives and so on and so forth. So, the moment has not come yet. Also, there is a problem of leadership, opposition leadership in Russia. There are no people who would lead the, protest in different cities. Alexei Navalny, the leader of opposition, is in jail and he faces he is already, he has already got 9 more years.
Yeah. Let me talk a bit about TV Rain, your channel, TV Rain. It survived just about a week into the war in Ukraine, and for that week, you had huge audiences, around 25 million, I think, on YouTube. Did you really think that would last?
No. Before the war has started, I was in Munich at security conference recording an interview with Antony Blinken. And before this interview, someone from the staff of State Secretary asked me, what's going to happen with TV Rain? And I said, if the war starts, they will destroy us. And this is what happened after a week. And this even this week was a present, a gift, from the government. It was a lot already that we had this opportunity to be on air.
So you expected that there would be a clampdown, but you wrote in an article last month, little did we know that our coverage of Russia's war in Ukraine was about to come to an end. The state had been harassing independent journalists for years, hadn't it, in Russia? So why on earth would they let you put out versions of the war that contradicted their own?
Of course. No, I was absolutely sure that they would destroy TV Rain sooner or later. And of course, we just did not know when exactly. When they started the war and did not shut down all the independent media immediately, we had this hope that maybe something has changed in the minds of Russian politicians. Maybe they have just forgotten about us.
But you still lived in a state where journalists had been killed or had been pushed off their balconies or at the very least been threatened continually. Did you think you could buck that trend for long? Wasn't the reason you were tolerated for so many years that Putin thought it useful to create a facade of democracy with a facade of a free press? But you were used for that, weren't you?
Yes, we were. But I think that, and we did understand what was going on in Russian Federation. It was not a situation like we were naive or something like that. No, we knew what was going on. But still, we were thinking about the viewers, the audience. We had a huge audience, really, 3+ something millions only on YouTube and on other platforms. Millions of people were watching TV Rain. And I know that there are two realities. First is Vladimir Putin pretending to have a democracy in Russia. This all has ended on February 24th. Second is the audience of TV Rain. Second, people who were watching us and they needed us and they still need us. So I can see how many people are texting me personally directly. Thousands of people asking to relaunch TV Rain, asking to have a new media, because people are starving for the information, alternative sources of information. It means a lot, and it really is important, because it means that there is no massive support of this war and Vladimir Putin personally.
Along with the radio station Echo of Moscow and the Novaya Gazeta, the new paper, you were the last of the independent media organizations. So you closed your YouTube channel and social media accounts almost immediately. Was there panic among your colleagues that final day? What was the mood in the studio when you realized it was over?
When the war has started, right after it started, people were in a terrible, terrible situation. When I was coming to the office, I was seeing in different parts of the newsroom, people sitting, reporters sitting and crying. It was not looking like panic. It was looking like people were acknowledging that their country is killing civilians, that Russian Federation is committing a crime against humanity. When we acknowledged this fact, it was a huge, huge trauma and huge, I don't know, it was a terrible, terrible feeling when you understand that your country is committing crimes. Your country that used to be, in the eyes of the world, a legend, which actually won over Hitler and won in the Second World War. Right now, Russia is committing pretty much the same as Nazi Germany was.
You had that realization, but do you think that realization is out there among the public in general? No. All the opinion polls seem to show a majority supporting the war, although they don't call it that. But the Russian sociologist Grigory Yudin suggests that these surveys don't show what people think; they show what they're prepared to say in public, and those are two very different things, aren't they, in Russia?
Of course, and Yudin is absolutely right. I don't believe anything, even if the sociology is right technically, because there is only one sociological institution in Russia right now, Levada Center, declared actually as a foreign agent, but still they have this normal, not fake researchers. But it's obvious that you cannot have direct answers from the people who live in dictatorship. You cannot have direct answers from people who understand that they can be detained, or may have a lot of problems from the government. Still, answering your question about the acknowledgement of the position of Russian Federation right now in Ukraine, I think that the big majority of people do not want to say this to themselves. They don't want to realize that their country is on the opposite side of the history right now. You know, the whole.
Do they, in some ways, persuade themselves that it's got nothing to do with them, or they just don't know that these war crimes allegations are out there now?
They don't want to think about it. There are so many people even texting me on my Telegram in the comments on my Telegram channel saying, we don't want to know. Why are you keep telling us that we are committing crimes in Ukraine? We don't want to know it because it's too difficult. It's not easy. And also there is a problem of internal relationships in the families in Russia. People are fighting each other. They are having divorces. They're having terrible conflicts with the friends, with relatives, husbands and wives and brothers. I mean, this is something that is really unacceptable for millions of Russians. And I'm really fearing that the moment of realization, the acknowledgement will come, and it's going to be a huge problem, a huge trauma, and it's not going to be easy for them. But the moment will come, of course.
What are we looking at here in Russia at the moment? Is this a return to full strength Soviet-style repression, as far as you're concerned?
Yes, I think it's even worse, because the problem in Russia is that after the collapse of USSR, and after Vladimir Yeltsin and Putin, after him, has come to power, of course he has started to, he has started repressions right after he came. But still, Russians did have this opportunity to use internet. Russians, during all these 20 years of Putin's presidency, did have opportunity to travel. They did have visas and passports, and they
make money as well.
And
that was the difference, wasn't it?
And
with the old Soviet Union.
And Russians, the new generation of Russians, and not only new generation, but also people in their 40s and 50s, they saw how beautiful life may be, how comfortable life may be. They understand what's going on in Great Britain, in Germany, in the United States of America. They cannot be fooled like they were in the Soviet Union. So right now, this is the shock for the people. And it's
Katerina, what would you have the West do about all this? Because you've said you don't want to face the situation when people in Washington or Berlin or Paris say about Russia, okay, this is another North Korea, let's forget about it. But what should the West do instead? They see your troops destroying the country next door and apparently committing terrible war crimes. What do you want people in the West to say?
I want people in the West to find solution with, for example, gas, Russian gas and Russian oil. I want them to find a solution when Vladimir Putin doesn't get billions of dollars every day for his oil and gas, which Europe buys.
But you say Russia shouldn't be isolated. Why not? It's an incredibly dangerous country to the West, isn't it?
Absolutely, but Russian people should not be isolated. This is very important.
Well, how do you isolate the government without isolating the people?
Well,
how do you do that?
It's important to support and help people who are out of Russia, first thing. Second, they need to sanction Russian government. Sanctioning Russian government means that they should not buy Russian oil and gas. This is first thing. I know that there is a huge problem with the whole infrastructure in Europe and in Germany mostly, which is based on Russian energy sources. But still, there should be some solution found. If we are facing the existential threat right now, the whole world is facing an existential threat from Vladimir Putin and his government, the steps must be strong. And the solution must be efficient.
What about the cultural and sporting bans on Russians? Are they wrong?
Yes.
Why?
I think they're. I mean, why?
What about Western companies? What about Western companies? Are they wrong to leave Russia?
Western companies are not wrong there when they leave Russia, because they spend money and they pay taxes for the government, which actually is killing civilians in Ukraine right now. So these are very different things to say. I think that, for example, the stronger position would be if right now in New York City or in Berlin or in Paris, you could see a huge concert of big Russian stars, for example, of classic music. If they said words about how wrong the war is, if they supported, if the Western society supported the Russians who are on the right side of the history. There's so many bright Russians, the representatives of Russian culture.
But that's difficult to do when you it's difficult to do when you tell me that Russians themselves are disengaged from politics and disengaged from what their own country is doing in Ukraine, right next door, destroying the country and murdering people left, right, and center.
This is the main problem. This is the main issue. You should not think that all Russians are the same. You should not. There are so many people. I mean, I know Russians, dissidents, writers, artists, journalists who are now fighting to get bank accounts in European countries. I mean, this is not the right way to do things. This is not the right way to react. The right way is to fight Vladimir Putin, his government, his army, is to give Ukrainians weapons, is to support Ukraine and refugees from Ukraine. But this is not the situation when you need to ban all Russians. I mean, we are
What is the Russian brand that you want people to see and appreciate? What is it?
Russia is
intellectual. You say Russia is important, but Russia is important at the moment because it's a huge threat to the West. It's perceived as a huge threat. That's its importance. It's hard to tell people that there's any other importance at the moment.
Yes, but
it's hard to have people in the West concentrating on them.
Tell me, Tim, am I responsible for Vladimir Putin's crimes? Tell me. Is a writer who right now, for example, is suffering, trying to find the way to get a ticket to Berlin, is he responsible? Are the journalists and politicians and activists and human rights activists and composers and directors, are they responsible if they were always against Vladimir Putin, but right now they are just Russians? This is not something that European way of life should bring to the world. I think that we used to fight and we will fight for European values. I really believe in European democratic values and Western European values. And these values do not build the picture when every Russian is the same.
But you would accept that it's a very mixed picture. And I'll give you an example. We're getting reports about the way informing on your friends or your colleagues is coming back into fashion in Russia. The return of so-called political commissars in factories and offices checking on people's opinions. Are you surprised how quickly that kind of thing has come back into Russia and how quickly it's been taken up? We're seeing people reporting on their teachers, the teachers being sacked and fined by the authorities for things they might have said to their students in class. There's a long history of that in Russia, isn't there? How depressing do you find it that it's come back?
It's of course depressing. This is something that makes me unhappy, softly saying. This is terrible, and I know that this is coming back. And this is something from, KGB past of Russia. This is something in genes of some people in Russian Federation. I would not argue with that. Of course, there are a lot of very bad people in Russia and people who support actively, aggressively Vladimir Putin's policy and actively, aggressively support Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. But still, there are so many teachers, for example, you have just mentioned, who are trying to tell children in the classrooms that this is wrong, that they need to be good people, that there are so many, professors and so many activists who are still trying to explain to others around them that there are people dead, killed in Ukraine by Russian soldiers.
Katerina, in the short time that we have left, do you think Ukraine could or ever should forgive Russia for what it's done?
Maybe in a lot of years, after a century, after 60 years, after 70 years, maybe they will find power. They will find something that will help them to forgive. But after everything that they have faced in Ukraine, after everything that Russian forces, Russian president and his inner circle and his propaganda faces have done, it's not going to be easy. And I really feel terrible about what's going on. This is something that changed the lives of Ukrainians. This is something that changed the life of my family and my friends. And this is something that took away my country and my home from me.
Do you want to go back to a country like that? Do you see yourself ever going back to a country like that?
As soon as Vladimir Putin is out, as soon as there is a chance of new life.
You think there's anything better to follow him?
There can be something better, yes, and I hope for it. And I'm gonna buy the ticket for the first plane to
Just
Moscow.
very briefly, can you ever look at Russia with the same eyes as you did before the war?
No, it's going to be a different country, but I still love it, and I still hope for the best for it. And I still think that we have a mission, like journalists, mission to rebuild something better in this country.
All right, we have to leave it there. Yekaterina Kotrikadze, thanks very much for being on Conflict Zone.
Thank you for the invitation, Tim.
Thank you.